Okay, welcome again. I'm continuing with chapter 4, tessellations and not matrices, tessellations and motifs by generative algorithms using Grasshopper from the Zubin Khabazi document that's free online through Grasshopper 3D. I'm just going to hit a little animation here because I've applied one of the scripts to something simple, and in some way it's kind of adolescent. But then again, my two boys and my youngest child, Ella, well, they're 10, 8, and 3. And how can you keep this interesting? How can you make modeling and scripting? Well, there's a lot to be taken from programs like uh, Scratch at MIT, in a sense of going in and making your own animations and scripts and figures. Well, this one I've actually taken a very simple attractor point and applied it to some geometries, and it's this kind of fun robotic army that's armed with some simple Roman javelins of sorts. And of course, they follow this form as it evolves and smooths. It's hard to notice from the UV count on that sphere, that mesh sphere, that it's becoming different in shape as it moves. But it's a slow running script, and that's probably because I used variable pipes on the arms and legs of each of these figures and then did a multitude of them, did a phalanx of them, a traditional larger number phalanx. I think there's 60. Yeah, I can't remember how many I have. Well, let's take a look at the script and have some fun. Here's the, I'm going to exit that and just zoom out. You can see this whole army of yeah, there's the oval's actually taking on some pretty interesting shapes as it moves. That being said, you can do whatever you want to the script to transform kind of the position of the figures. Their arms adjust. It's fairly parametric, and they point their sword or their javelins at that simple moving sphere as it goes around. Pretty simple and fun to begin with. I think you should play with it. I may take a rendering out when I'm done, but right now we'll leave it in this situation. We'll go into the script. The script is one that I generated pretty much here from the original, so I'm just going to hit preview off. I'm going to put on the original script that comes with it. It's fairly simple, enable, and probably preview on. And what you can see right off the bat, I'm going to bring up the geometries, is I've brought in a rectangle grid, which comes off of I believe vectors right here under the grid tool. I set it to raising it on the z-plane. So actually I have control over moving that up and down on the z-plane. I think 12 was pretty good. I set the size and spacing just because of my figures and how I wanted to be, and that seemed to be the grid. So that being said, I had to also generate a point, and there's that point that actually is the center of the sphere, and that can be moved around, and it's manipulated a little later in the script. I did a 2-point vector, which is impossible to see without a vector display. So the vector display is right here, and I'll have to put this on in order to see. Where's my vector display? I've lost my point. That's why I need to go in here and reference that point, and I lost it because I took it out of the picture. It's going to affect the script a little later, but I'll just reset it here. There we go. So there we go. We have those squares. Let's take this off so we see the squares. We see the vectors in display, and there they are, pointing in the direction of where they're going, and they're small little arrow vectors, and they're all pointing towards, coming off of those grid points, towards that point as I move it. So if I go so far back into it and isolate that point, just manipulating this, you can see the vectors update and change their position as that point moves. I then found a line start direction and length, which shows you have control over what those were. And I was thinking, like, they're spearheads. I took a point at the start and end of them and put planes on those so I could orient a polygon on there, and I chose to do very few segments, and that's what went wrong with my script earlier. I actually had segments 4, and that's something that I lost hold of. Yeah, those were the segments on those planes, and then I pushed them to an extrusion. Oh, of course, I'm just in the test script, so I don't need that. Basically, I'm just orienting these on that position and making them extrude to a point using the extrude point tool. That's what came with the demo and reading through the book. That's the type of stuff you're given as foundations. What will you do with it? And hopefully you find this interesting as to what I did. And And watching my videos, you see my head is all over the place when I do this. I'm a pretty chaotic individual, even though I think I offer some tidbits and advice for this, and in a way that I wasn't. I was trying to find videos that could teach me this online. My biggest challenge now is trying to find some excellent tutorials on Python Node, because I noticed that there's some great examples on Grasshopper going into basic script and VB script and C sharp, but I'm going to need Python a little better for me to advance with that, because I would like to write these scripts a little more condensed to how I'm doing it. So let's take that and disable it, and let's write the script again. Pretty simple. Let's take all this and let's yeah, it's already enabled, and not everything's on preview. So that being said, I'm going to go into the script and generate exactly what I did. I made cells. I found a point. On each one, I found the vector display as to where it's going, and those are all pointing off to the piece that's up here. All those vectors are pointing off in direction of that that point. And I have lines that run, and obviously I have two different points here, because that point, which is in the script, this point here is that point there. It's not this initial one. So if I go into here and point it, yeah, this point I've had to move it later on. You'll see why as I brought it further out. It actually moves that point. So even though I'm moving it here, it actually comes up in my display here. I'll show you evidence of why that happens. I'm grabbing the ends of all those points. I'm setting planes on them, and I'm orienting those squares on those planes. And actually, I chose 4 sides. So they're very, very tiny, because I want to find the center of each one of those points. And this is where my script takes over, and it becomes referenced back to all the information that's in here. And in referring it all back to here, my script generates what I want to end up taking to render. So as we go in there and we see, I'm definitely going to need centroids as I go. And with those centroids, I write the script kind of top down instead of across. I'm going to basically go in and move all of those points to build a line, and that becomes the shaft of the extruded object. So that's the extruded object. And then what I do is I find a point on that curve and decide that's where I'm going to render another line, and then have the arm come back. And I'm generating points and lines because I do want to intend on all of these geometries to think of where the hands would be situated, where the shoulders would be situated, where I could put on the head, the torso, the body. And you can see I'm constructing by this and putting on the odd list item, horizontal frame to find center. There's many ways of doing that. And then I had to flip the plane in some instances. So I started to build the line point general system so I could put things like this on and cap it as the torso. So what happens, the script, I'll have it on GitHub, ignore that top little bit. Basically, I came in and I put all these on the points where I wanted hands, shoulders, and feet. I then put on these lines the shafts for the kind of the tool, and the tool's there, but there's the shaft of the weapon, and there's the hands holding that weapon, or the hand and feet just standing at attention. In between that on the lines, I put the variable pipes. I thought it was interesting to have both arms be this kind of variable pipe system that's controlled by, obviously, what I love to do, which is the gene pool, to make pipes a little more interesting, certainly not using mesh pipes. I capped the tops of these so they'd be solid, so I could use them if I had to bring them into manufacture or making them. And I flipped these arms so they're kind of wider at the bottom than at the top. They have bigger forearms and biceps, which doesn't really matter because they're not really real. And then I chose these mesh to move fast in this. I chose, why not use the mesh spheres? And in doing so, I keep the UV count low so I can actually have some pretty cool shapes for hips and sides. I brought in a center box and chose to have it all parametric off these equations, off of a certain, I think it's the 4 count on the initial, what was the 4 count initially on? That seems to be the piece of data that's keeping everything tied together. The 4 count was the segments of the polygon to start. So I kept with that. And then in the end, I did the legs the same way and chose the same information, put the legs on. So you have these strange little soldiers as you move this. Because I use this tiny script up here to move geometry around and bring it over here. I'm not sure why I did. I've merged this set in here and this set in here, and the reason I've merged sets here and these sets here is I want to bake them in groups and have them so they can go into different metallic colors. The other object is basically the sphere at the top, which is pretty interesting because I made it so when it's over in this section, it has this shape, and as I set it to animation, as it moves, it's changing the count on that form. So it becomes more, I don't know, special as they move their swords towards it as I move it. So if you bring all of this out and you have that figure and you want to move this in an animation, you can do the animate, or you can just move the geometry, and you'll see those figures have to adjust where they're pointing their little swords or spheres to it. And I choose the Z-X axis, and I really like that. The center point of the script is really at these hands, and even though their feet don't line up to the bottom, I can make that work with other scripts for landscapes. But what a great little assignment, 10 minutes in. I think it's really fun. I'm going to grab this one and say, listen, I don't mind that little odd rendering of these guys all pointing their swords towards it. Maybe I'll move it back so they have to follow suit. It's trivial. They're my minions. It's to see if my mind can stay organized through an awful lot of this stuff. So you also have the ability to bring up your army count tremendously by just taking this count and saying, okay, I want to edit that series and have 8 in that phalanx moving, and I could extend it in the other direction as well by snapping that to 8 by 8. And that's where I love the way Grasshopper reads left to right, and you can do whatever you want. And there you go. You can change the scale. Now you got some minions that are really pointing their swords up towards the sphere, and possibly that sphere is not. If I move it up here, now they can kind of point up in the air a little bit higher. Maybe that's a little too high. But if I want to send them over to this side, bring it over this way, there you go. That's kind of affecting the script each time. You can see they're actually, doing what I say, I guess, in an adolescent way. But like I said, I have kids to make this interesting for, so they'll take an interest in doing it. Let's just close this out for a second. Grab this over. I will have to bring it back in for 1 second. Do what I said I was going to do. If in the minutes I have left, grab this and go to bake, and because you can click on that because it's merged, you can select to have them all in the same, and here I can take a bake. You're going to realize you're going to want to group these in sections before you go, and then this one I'll take a bake because I want a third object, just default layer 1. I get in the habit of baking in groups. I want to leave that script so I'm not highlighting anything. I have my tiny little minions. I'm going to put it to render. I am going to open up my lovely little script here, and there's something funky going on there. I'm not sure why I'm bugging out. That's strange. I'm going to have to restart. So let's grab this little minion collection, and it should grab all the hip suits. Let's turn that to a metallic gold, and that should be fine. And then let's grab the chest sets and go to a glass. Well, that would be a bad idea. Let's go to, glass transparent is going to cause a lot of trouble. Let's go in there and take that one, but let's not make it glass. Let's make it metal, and that should be a nice blue. Set that object to these, and then up here I'll just play off the purple again, the metallic purple or the glass purple. We'll do metallic purple and just do that. This is pretty gaudy, pretty ugly. But there's your little army of guys that obey what you say. Take them, put them on different scripts, let them balance in water or hovering. And there they are. Nice little thing. Take a little script and build yourself a pretty cool little render. Take it over into good old detailed ray traced. And with the time you have left, I'm not going to get my render done, that's for sure. We'll just take it over and hit this. I'm in draft quality, so I might get lucky. But there's your little army of guys rendered. And, it's hardly, 4th year level teaching at the Kansas City Art Institute, but theory-wise, but really as a conceptual exercise, working in generative design is essential for getting to mass customization in your work, not doing single iterations, a few a term, and really getting into this idea of understanding your work, not just being passionate and emotional about your work and having a drive to do it, an obsession, but really understand your work. So there we go, and this render is taking forever, you can see here, and nothing's actually gone to the render window. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that interesting. I'm going to keep continuing, and where am I? I guess I'm on page 46 or something of this. I'm going down, and pretty cool stuff as we go through the transformations. Right now I'm finishing up with, these orientation. We're going to go into transformation. And what do they want to do? Change the sizes of polygons, play with that. But do 2 parametric towers, which is actually the first script they offer when you download this. That's one of the first GH scripts you can follow, but there's no point copying. learn and do your own thing.